Rincon Mountains Phenology Project focus on Saguaro National Park East and Mica Mountain. The Saguaro National Park East is 67,476 acres. The East Saguaro has 128 miles of hiking trails, and the Arizona Trail cuts through this rugged district. My hypothesis for this project was if the temperature and precipitation decrease, it will then have a negative impact on the flora and fauna in Saguaro National Park and up Mica Mountain. The hiking location for the phenology project was done on the south end of Saguaro National Park using the Camino Loma Alta trailhead. There was roughly a 400-foot elevation gain that started at about 3,100 feet and ended at 3,500 feet. Part of this trail was part of the Arizona National Scenic Trail. There was a lot of rocky terrain, lots of hills, and there were 7 perennial streams on my hike and fieldwork that I passed through and over. Largest stream was roughly at 3.75 miles of the hike, and most streams are at the first 2.5 miles of the hike. The Rincon Mountains are part of the Madrinan Sky Islands. The Rincon Mountain District of Saguaro National Park ranges from an elevation of 26,700 feet to 86,66 feet and contains 6 biotic communities. The community that I focused on this project was between the desert and thorn scrub or the desert grasslands, which consisted mainly of short and mid-sized grasses dominated by velvet mesquite trees. For this phenology project, I focused on the Saguaro National Park and Rincon Peak weather stations to compare data for this area. I want to also state that it is an average of 12.5 inches of rain yearly for this area. In the graphs below, you can see that Saguaro National Park and Rincon Peak have a relatively similar precipitation and average daily high temperature and daily low temperature. It looks like in October we got the least amount of rain, which will be shown in the next slides, that you can see how that has affected the plants. September 18th was the first day that I took data for this project. I started my hike at 8 a.m. to 11:08 a.m. was my end time. What I did was I hiked 4 miles in and then stopped and then hiked it back. Part of this trail was part of the Arizona National Scenic Trail. In this picture you can tell that everything is green and there's still a small amount of water visible due to the rain. There were many observations that I had found during this field work exercise. I saw deer, rabbits, butterflies, dragonflies, lizards, horny toad, and a Sonoran desert tortoise. My observations for the vegetation was that it was very green throughout the whole entire trail and there were flower blooms. October 28th was my second day for my field exercise. It started at 11:05 a.m. As you can tell from the beginning slide, the mountains and trees already started looking yellow and losing color in the surrounding area. You can also notice that the ocotillo are losing their leaves as well. There is no water during this time, which matches with our data on the graph. There were less mammals observed during this time, but more insects that were visible. Also, the temperature was at least less than September by at least 10 degrees. There were no visual differences on the saguaros as well. November 26th was my third and final hike. It started at 8:51 a.m. I still went the 4 miles into the trail. As you can see, things are a lot yellow and losing color. The mountains lack a lot of greenery. There's a lot of yellow and no growth. During this hike, there was a drastic decrease in temperature by at least 10 degrees. This caused a lack of amphibians or reptiles and insects due to how cold it was at the start of the hike. There was also found some ground squirrels, jackrabbit, and birds. The vegetation had no flower booms. Palo Verde trees lost all their leaves. Plants looked very dry. Ocotillo lost all their leaves, and no visual differences on the saguaros. I wanted to bring to light the Sonoran desert tortoise, which is one of the most important and known about reptiles in the Sonoran desert. It does differentiate between the Mojave desert tortoise, which is found in Nevada and California. The habitat is the rocky canyons and hillsides. It can last up to 35 or 40 years in the wild. They burrow to escape heat and can go for long periods of time without food or water. It was actually very surprising seeing one of these in the wild, seeing that the only time I've ever seen them is in captivity. A plant I wanted to focus on for this project was the Arizona wild cotton or desert cotton. This is the first time that I've come across this plant, and I've lived in Arizona my whole life, so I wanted to do some research on it because it honestly looked very beautiful, and I was surprised in October and September that it still had blooms on it. It is a shrub of the cotton family that is native to desert areas of Arizona and Mexico. It blooms from May to October, and it's found in the rocky canyons and slopes in riparian areas, grasslands, and oak woodlands up to 6,000 feet in elevation. The place that I constantly had seen them during this hike was in riparian areas and nowhere else. These are some pictures that I took from my house showing the landscape from a distance, seeing if I could see any visual changes. There were some challenges during this project that I came across and some improvements that I would make if I did this again. I wanted to compare two biomes on the trail, but that would have been an extended 8 miles on top of my already 8 miles that I did, so it was just not feasible with time and energy. Another thing that I would have improved on was done the hike exact day, exact time, every single month so that it was more accurately every 30 days. Um, if I did do this, I probably would have also taken more field notes so that I could collect more data. There were some surprising observations found at the end of my field work. There was a visible difference between September and November regarding the greenery of the surrounding areas and plants. I was not expecting the plants to change color and lose their leaves. I was expecting the temperature to have an impact on the fauna observed, such as the insects and amphibians and reptiles, but the thing that surprised me the most was that even up until November 26th, you still saw butterflies on the trail. Even though there was only a roughly 400-foot elevation change and you stayed within the same biome, there were still plants that were only seen in specific areas and not throughout the whole area, such as creosote, desert cotton, and mesquite. Creosote were only found within the first 1.5 miles of the hike. The desert cotton, as I talked about before, were only in like riparian areas, and the mesquite were only in areas with streams and valleys. Some Saguaro National Park fun facts for you. President Herbert Hoover established Saguaro National Park on March 1st, 1933 as a national monument. It didn't become a national park until 1994. Saguaro National Park is home to 25 different species of cactus, at least 225 species of grasses, and the Madrina Sky Islands is one of the most biodiverse places in the country with more than 7,000 species of plants and animals. The non-native invasive bufflegrass is currently the biggest threat to saguaro cacti.